Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today we're going to be doing a video where we're going to discuss 10 really good fits in the 2025 NFL Draft for your Jacksonville Jaguars. So this is going to go over a lot of different positions, probably a little more offense. I've got more player scout on that side, so just kind of the way this falls. But we're going to be talking about a lot of different guys. We're going to go from the lowest ranked I have to the highest ranked. And one caveat here as well to consider is that we're going to talk about some guys who maybe are not as much going to be available at a pick for Jacksonville, but maybe if you trade, maybe if you're moving down or moving up, these guys could be there. So we'll have some names in the first round that I think they'll go well between 5 and 36 where the Jaguars select, but maybe Jacksonville moves. Maybe these are players that could head to the team. So we got some interesting names to talk about here. We're going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to start on the defensive side. We're going to start on the defensive side of the ball with Nazir Stackhouse. So Stackhouse is probably, I would say, kind of a simple evaluation. He's a nose tackle who's really good stuffing the run, doesn't offer much as a pass rusher. You see it in the grades on the top right, but for Jacksonville, this is a team that, in my opinion, I don't think they've been great against the run. They surely are not above average at best. And so you want to get in more people who can help with that. And you don't want to really have to go out there and spend at the position because I think that the defensive tackle market, it can get kind of ridiculous with some players. Sometimes you can find really cheap ones that are impactful, but it's not always a super common thing. So I would prefer for the Jaguars to be able to find someone through the draft. And I think Nazir Stackhouse is a really simple name here. You might lose Devon Hamilton. It's possible because, you gotta ask yourself, is this guy worth the 7 or 8 million that he's slated to earn this next year? And I would say that's debatable. I would say probably not, but it's obviously hard to replace that position. I don't really like a lot of the options there this offseason. And so if you want to get someone in who's not going to cost you a whole lot and has a pretty good track record of stopping the run, I think Nazir Stackhouse could do that. I think this could be a guy you could get deep into day 3 even, or just somewhere on that day of the draft that ends up taking a lot of snaps for the team and you end up feeling good about as a draft pick. So that's kind of my thought process here. It's not a flashy pick. It's not someone to get crazy excited about, but someone I think could be a fit for the Jaguars. Now, getting into another likely day 3 name here, I got Benjamin Urasek. So if you followed summer scouting at all, this is the guy I'm a big fan of. So Urasek, to me, he was the top tight end coming into this last year. I think I had him 3rd or 4th in my rankings. And keep in mind, rankings have changed a lot. You had players that I ended up throwing on that I didn't even scout during the summer. For example, Tyler Warren was a name I skipped just because of drop issues, and he's my top guy now at this position. So a lot of things have changed here, but Benjamin Urasek, he was someone who I felt like was a very proficient receiving tight end with Stanford coming into this year. He transferred to Georgia, and while he didn't have a lot of production early in the year, Urasek had a really good opportunity to balance out his game, to be more impactful as a blocker, and ultimately someone who is probably more pro-ready now than he was before. And so you see some of these grades, if you go compare them to what I had in the offseason, the round grade may have gone down a little bit, but ultimately, I think this is a prospect who's built better. I think he's someone who can do everything. I think he could work in a Liam Cohen offense and be more of that receiving guy for the team. But if you need him to block, if you need him to get involved in that regard, Benjamin Urasek should be able to do that. So that's kind of my thinking with him. You know, you see obviously the size, like that's a little bit of the concern here. He's 6'4", 242. It's nothing incredible, but he's also someone who's got a really big wingspan for a receiver. I mean, he's got pass rusher type arms. So that's great to see. Means you got a big catch radius and you got a lot to work with there. So I think this is someone who legitimately could make it onto the field full time for an NFL team. We'll have to see what happens, and part of that depends on where he lands. But I would love to have him in Jacksonville as, say, maybe, you know, a 4th or 5th round pick for this team. Now, another guy that I've been a fan of for a while now is Hunter Wohler. He is a Wisconsin strong safety, and if you really look at the Jaguars roster, I would argue that we really don't have anyone at this position that is great at this point. I don't know if we even have a true strong safety on the roster, because you look at what Andre Sisco's done, right? You look at what Darnell Savage has done. Those are guys who have played more free safety. They're more guys who are kind of roaming around, built more athletically. Although there's been some questions about Andre Sisco in that regard. But that's ultimately more of how they're built. And then Antonio Johnson, he has been someone that you look at his history and he's much better in the slot, right? He's someone who has kind of struggled in the safety role. And so ultimately I look at this team and I'm like, do I have someone I really trust to be a strong safety? And the answer is no, right? Regardless of if you bring back Andre Sisco or not, you don't have someone to fill this role. So Hunter Wohler, he's not a super flashy prospect, but he's someone who's built very well. He's 6'1.5" roughly, 217. Actually, really quick, let's explain what this means here. The hand, arm, and wingspan. So how you read these, just really quick, because I forgot to say this on the first prospect. The first number or 2 is you're going to be your inches, and then the last 2 is going to be so hand size here be 9 inches and then 3/8 of an inch. The next one's 31 inches and 1/8 of an inch, and then his wingspan is 74 inches and 2/8 of an inch. So it's the first of those last numbers divided by the last of those last numbers. So hopefully that makes some sense. I forgot to mention that. But Hunter Wohler, you see it by his grades. Like, he's just a very solid player. He's a really good run defender, a tough guy. He's a great leader as well. Anyone who's been a part of that Wisconsin program or fans would vouch for that. They would tell you that. And I think it would be good for this team to get more people like that on the defensive side of the ball. So Hunter Wohler, I don't know if he goes day 2, but I think you could snag him early on day 3 of the draft and legitimately get a starting caliber type of player. I think he could be a really good steal for a team. So that's kind of what I'm looking at with him. And ultimately, you know, we'll have to see where he falls. I could see Denver maybe being interested with the Jim Leonard connection there. Maybe he goes a little bit earlier to a team like that, but we'll have to see what happens. But Wohler, I think, is a very safe prospect and someone who offers a really good skill set for what strong safety is going to do. Now, getting to our next guy, who is we'll call him the cover athlete for this video. That is Kyle Monangai. So Kyle Monangai is one of my guys for this year. No pun intended there. He is 23, so he's a little bit older of a back, but he's had a phenomenal career with Rutgers. He's a 5'9", 210-pound back who plays, like he's probably 20 pounds heavier at least. This is a super physical run. Monangai is, I think, someone that, while he didn't really get to show off the receiving ability of himself, is a very well-rounded player. He is an incredible blocker, which is why he gets that S-tier grade there. He will level defenders. Like, this guy takes pride there. That is an area that the Jaguars have struggled in as well. And so Monangai makes a lot of sense from that perspective. I think he can also be the receiving back. Just my personal thoughts. It's not a common opinion, but That's where I'm at on it. And I think this is someone that can set the tone for your backfield and for the offense as well, just bringing a physical brand of football. Now, the concern with Monangai is more so his speed. He doesn't have great top-end speed. It's kind of average, and he can get rushed down by a lot of people. But for Monangai, he has some really good burst. And so what you're going to see in like the 10 to 15 yard range is really impressive. He can get through holes. He can really speed up. And the way he jukes out defenders is very calculated. It's not these huge exaggerated cuts, but he's able to do these little juke moves that ultimately preserve his speed and keep him going. He's actually part of the reason why he's able to do this sort of stuff, being so well at it, is that his background is as a dancer. It kind of sounds crazy. Sounds like a weird thing, but it has helped him in his football career, and that's something that he has credited much of his success to. So Monangai, I think he's a really good fit for the Jaguars offense. He brings things that you're missing, and ultimately, I think this is another Rutgers running back that ends up being a starter eventually, or at least a big part of a committee at the NFL level. So I'm a huge fan. But another guy I'm a huge fan of as well is Maxwell Hairston. So Hairston, he's a Kentucky cornerback. He is, I would have said before the Senior Bowl, this is a zone cornerback that probably can't do a ton in run defense because of his size, even though he's willing in that type of role. But man, what he did at the Senior Bowl, they put you in man coverage situations so much out there, and he's just locking people down. He has the athleticism. He has the ball skills. He has the ability to really just play whatever scheme you're asking him to do. This is also a guy that brings a really good mentality to the game. Going to be a fan favorite if he comes here. Really for any team, honestly. I think that fans are going to fall in love with him, but he's just someone who is going to have a lot of tools to use on the NFL field. And really the only question is, I wouldn't even say it's height here. Like, you see that the wingspan is not that bad for a cornerback. That's actually pretty good. But it's the weight, right? He's 179 pounds. So is this someone who could come in and lock down like a Mike Evans type of player? Probably not. That's not really what he's built for. And so that's maybe some of the concern or some of the limitation. But Maxwell Hairston, he's got a really good skill set. And he went up against some really good receivers out there and some bigger guys. He was able to play well against them. I think you could bring him in and he could very confidently lock down the opposite side of the field from Tyson Campbell. So, am I a fan of a move like this for Jacksonville? For sure. I think if you're not landing like a Will Johnson or a Travis Hunter in the first round, when you're looking at pick 36, which I did say, probably not going to involve conversation of where we're picking too much, but Maxwell Hairston, there'd be a really strong argument for him to be the pick. He might be your top guy on your board at that point, and someone who should really be able to come in and just lock things down. I think he's someone who could also be a leader. That was something he talked about when I interviewed him at the Senior Bowl, that he wants to get involved in that regard and be a critical piece on the defense and really can get along with whoever he's working with, right? And the icing on the cake, this guy knows Liam Cohen pretty well. So you love to see that. Now, getting to our next guy, getting into the top 5 here, we've got what gets more into first-round prospects, which Maxwell Hairston's also part of that, to be fair. But Gray Zabel, so another player here we interviewed, I have him marked down as a left guard, but honestly, he could really play in. Like, the question, of course, for tackle, it's the arm length, but wherever they put him at the Senior Bowl, he was just so good at keeping himself between the defender and the quarterback at all times. Just really good athleticism. Probably would even give him a higher grade than what's listed over there. But this is someone that if you're looking to really lock down this offensive line and just get in a solid player who can really just make an impact for you right off the bat, similar to what maybe Graham Barden did last year for the Buccaneers. I think Gray Zabel's that kind of guy. I think this is someone who's going to keep Trevor Lawrence upright, who's going to bring a really good mentality to that, someone who's a good run blocker as well. And ultimately, I don't think it's going to be a hard transition for him coming to the NFL. Now, the question is, would he make it to a Jaguars pick, right? You might have to move up for him. But ultimately, like Gray Zabel, this is just a very sound football player. And you could use that on an offensive line that has struggled in recent years. So I'm a big fan of Gray Zabel at this point. The Senior Bowl definitely did a lot for his stock for me. He is now 30th on my big board and probably has a chance to rise even further. So definitely excited to see what happens for him for the rest of the process. But this is a really good player who I think has the size to play inside for sure. And he has a very sound game and showed that he is capable of making a transition to playing somewhere else in left tackle if he's asked to. And he could do that pretty quick. Now, we got 3 more people here, actually 4. So we're going to get to a wide receiver. We haven't talked too much about those so far. But Emeka Egbuka. So this would have probably been one I'd have like even higher as a fit if Ben Johnson had been the coach. But regardless, I think he makes a ton of sense for Jacksonville. They want to bring in guys at the receiver position who are going to be able to block, right? I think Liam Cohen wants people who are going to be well-rounded, who are going to be able to contribute really in every area of the game. It's all hands on deck is the kind of approach they're taking. And that is what Emeka Egbuka brings to the game. This guy, he brings it to everything he's asked. He's a phenomenal route runner as well. I'd bump up the grade as well, and I just forgot to do that. So probably like an A instead of a B+, but someone who had a really good year, a good bounce back after being injured in the past, which caused him to return to school in part, and someone who brings a lot of physicality. There's also rumors that Egbuka can run almost a 4.3. We'll have to see if he does that. I'd probably have him closer to a 4.4. But this is someone who, man, I mean, he just has a really good set of tools. He's a very refined player. He kind of reminds you, I mean, you mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? The only difference there is the mentality that St. Brown had, right? I don't think that's being replicated by any players until I see it happen again. But you can also think of, say, a Jackson Smith-Njigba, right? That would be a player you could also comp him to. Maybe he falls somewhere between that and Amon-Ra, but JSN was phenomenal this year for much of the season. And we'll have to see if that continues, but these are good receivers that Egbuka should translate pretty close to with his skill set. And if you want to have a good first-round pick, if you want to move up for this guy or move back or whatever it is, Egbuka is a very safe pick and should be a home run pick for really whatever team takes him. Just that's where I think things are going to land. Now, we'll talk really quick about one last defensive player here because we've pretty much talked all offense for a lot of this. But Kenneth Grant, this is our last one. He is a nose tackle, but this is someone who brings more than just run stuff. He is a big player, 6'3.5", 342 pounds. He's got a good size. You see a 33-inch 33-inch arm length from him, over 80 inches in his wingspan. Some really good tools here. This is also a player that, despite being 342 pounds, he can run like hell. I mean, we saw a play where he was tracking down, I think it was Hines-Allen, and he's doing this at like the second or third level of the defense. I mean, this is crazy. Like, you should not see this from a nose tackle. But if you want to get someone in there who could be a game changer in the middle of that defense, you want to get in someone who's going to take this team from maybe being below average at stuffing the run to one of the better teams in the NFL, Kenneth Grant does that. And he might also provide you some more pass rush from the interior. So you say you get this guy on the field with, say, Eric Armstead out there next to him, or Mason Smith, and you might have both of them depending on if it's a 3-4 front or what you're running. But you get Kenneth Grant out there with these guys, this is a great defensive line. Like, I think ultimately, aside from obviously the conversation of trying to add some depth to the pass rush on the outside with the edge rushers, if you add a nose tackle who is legitimately talented to this team, I think you've got a really good defensive line. I don't think you're that far off if you get that. So, Kenneth Grant, I just think he's a really good fit. I think this is also someone who'd be easy to like. You'd probably value him a lot in the locker room. Someone who would be probably a very easy, good pick for the Jaguars. And, well, you may not see the stats that are eye-popping throughout the careers of these players. And you even talk about Jordan Davis here for an example, who is kind of my pro comp for Grant in some ways. Those players still have a huge impact, because if you can stop the run, which is what Liam Cohen has said is like top priority on the defense, you're gonna have a lot of things working in your favor as a football team. Now, getting to our last two guys, we got two offensive players who go by the same name. So Tyler Warren is the first one. Now, this might sound dumb, because you're like, we have Evan Ingram, we have Brendan Strange, and you're telling me Tyler Warren's a fit. Well, here's the thing. You obviously, if you watched my channel recently, you saw the Evan Ingram video, and I apologize for the popping in that. I hope that doesn't happen again on a video, but I don't know what was going on, so hopefully that's dealt with. But Tyler Warren, I think he could be a fit, and even possibly a need for the Jaguars if you're moving on from Evan Ingram. And Evan Ingram, well, I think he's a very good tight end. There are questions about how he translates this type of offense. We need to know if Liam Cohen is going to adjust how he calls plays, or how much the tight end is involved in the receiving game, which he would have to increase the involvement there and decrease the amount of blocking duties. He could do that, or he could say, you know what, this is the offseason. This is not the type of scheme I want to run where I have a receiving tight end that's predominantly in that role. Maybe he moves on from him. And if he does, all of a sudden Brendan Strange is pretty much your only guy there. And then you could bring back Luke Farrell maybe, but you got one guy on the team. And so could you bring in his former teammate Tyler Warren? Say you're trading down in the first round. Now you get someone who's going to be a phenomenal blocker, someone who's also kind of an offensive weapon, could be heavily involved in the receiving game, and just gives you one of the best tight end rooms once again in the NFL, but maybe fitting more what the Jaguars want to do. So that could be the question. We've obviously seen Trevor Lawrence have a big connection with Evan Ingram. I think you get in someone like Tyler Warren, you could replicate that again with him. But it is the question of what is going to happen, right? What players are going to stay? What players are going to go? That changes a lot of these things, because you talk about even Emeka Egbuka. He doesn't make sense on this list if you're keeping Christian Kirk. So things could change. We'll have to see what happens. But ultimately, I think Tyler Warren, regardless, he's a really good fit for this offense. And if you want to run two tight ends, it works great. I think Brendan Strange will be just fine for you. But you get guys who really fit what Liam Cohen has done so far in his time as an offensive coordinator at the NFL level. Now, getting into our last guy, say you had the same name, so you know who this is. It's Tyler Booker. So Tyler Booker, he's just been a favorite of mine since I watched him at first. He is a damn good guard prospect. This guy is built to succeed. He's going to come into the NFL at 21 years old. He's 6'4.5", 348 pounds. And he moves well. He is not a bad athlete. This guy mauls in the run game. He will block his ass off as a pass blocker. He's smart. He can pick up blocks when he needs to. He knows what to do on plays. I think he's very disciplined. And this is a leader. This is someone who could come in on an offensive line that, in my opinion, losing Brandon Scherf, and probably not playing on Mitch Morse to be the long-term future, you need a voice in that room. You need someone who's going to take that role on. And it may be hard for a rookie to do that first year, but Tyler Booker, I think early on in his career, he can do that. I think he's that type of guy. This is someone who is just ultra competitive. He's a smart guy. He's so talented. I do not understand why he's not being mocked higher than he is right now. And what's exciting to me, the most exciting idea of this, is if Tyler Booker ends up falling, let's say he gets into the 20s, gets to 24, and we did this in our mock draft the other day, so you'll be hearing this again if you watch that. The Houston Texans need a guard at 25. The Vikings pick at 24. If you give them back their picks in the 3rd and 4th round, you could flip back up from 36 to 24, take that player from them, and get someone who transforms your offensive line. And now they got to play that every week. It's an enticing idea to me. And I would just have to say, if I'm the Jaguars, like, that is a note that I have taken, and that's something I'm heavily considering on draft day if things fall that way. But Tyler Booker, I think he's just going to be one of the next great guards in the NFL. Profile is very similar to Trey Smith, who he's on the free agent market most likely this year. He's slated to earn probably over $20 million a year, might reset the guard market. If you can get that kind of player in the draft who's going to be worth that type of contract, that's a big win. So if Jacksonville could pull that off, I'd be ecstatic. And I think it really fits what they want to do, where they want to start with this offensive line, with setting the tone in the trenches, being dominant there. That's why you bring in Liam Cohen. That's why you bring in Tony Baselli as your EVP, right? If they can pull this off, that's a big win for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So with that said, we are going to go ahead, get to the end of this video. Those are 10 prospects I think really fit. We'll probably do one more of these down the road, but these are guys I would love to have in Jacksonville. I think they would make a lot of sense for what we're going to try to run, what we want to do, and just the value of these players to this organization. So with that all said, I do want to shout out our channel members really quick. We got Premier Nasir 904, Nightmare Eco, Gator John Bites, Scrubber Ducky 500, and Mogar. I appreciate all your support. Thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know some of your favorite players, guys you think fit really well with this team, and I'll make sure to get back with you in the comments. So appreciate y'all watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.